Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is March 13, 2024. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Sara Hana. Sara, where in the heck you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, how cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
What is the best thing for a human being? You mean herbally? Because I'm an herbalist?
Well, here's the thing. You put the questions into the context that you want.
Got it. What is the best thing for a human being? Gosh, such a deep question. Hold on, hold on, hold on. I guess the best thing for a human being is to honor all other living things on the planet.
I love it. All other living things. You are great. Okay. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
So, I love audio. I'm an audio learner. I listen to lots and lots of lectures. I don't want to just call them podcasts because in my days it aged me, lectures. And I do like to read. I'm a little slower than my brain speed, but I'm a very big reader. I never am not in the middle of reading 1 to 3 books.
Did you become a reader, one, because your parents told you to, two, they did it as an example, or three, on your own?
So I'm a Jewish woman and we're considered people of the book. So we learn to read very, very, very early, and books, our homes are constantly inundated in every corner with books. So it
Yeah.
was really a cultural thing. But I have and had dyslexia. So it was very hard being in a world of intellectuals having dyslexia. Out of seven of my kids, 4 to 5 have it, four have it intensely. So
Yeah.
I spent many, many down payments on houses teaching my dyslexic children to read. So when I was growing up, it was very shocking to those that met me that I had such a reading disorder. So it took me a very long time to fall madly in love with reading and to make it a part of my daily routine.
Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think the world is very confusing. And I think that what we see is not always really true. I think a lot of us are very influenced. Well, we're obviously influenced by our upbringing. So we live in this little tunnel vision. And at least for me, when I read and learn, it allows me to see things from a different perspective.
Beautiful. Thanks for being so dang articulate and concise. I love it. Thank you. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I think innately we need it because we need to be able to take a piece of wood and make a knife. We need to protect ourselves from the elements. So I think that it's innate, but I think the desire to become more worldly with a bigger view is something that's taught by parents 100%
Do
or
thought
caregivers.
or caregivers? Beautiful. You're comprehensive. I appreciate this. Do thoughts create emotions?
I would love to say that, but I think in my many years of life, I think the emotions tend to kick in and sometimes we don't intellectually analyze them. I think it's a intuitive reaction to information that we get.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
Speak to someone else, either a mentor or a mashpia or someone that I respect.
It's beautiful. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it. Can humans think without language?
I don't know. I'm such a talker, that's why I'm doing this podcast with you. I'm a talker. So I wouldn't be able to answer that honestly. I don't know. But, but, but I'm an international board certified lactation consultant. I've helped over 45,000 babies breastfeed for the past 30 years. and my babies don't talk. So my answer is going to change. They look at me, they respond, they hear what I say. So even a 2-day-old baby is thinking without speaking.
There you go. Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
I mean, I deal with many people that have Asperger's, and it's very challenging because the words that would be logical to another person doesn't penetrate, and it's not logical. So I live in an existence, especially in my office, where people don't always understand what seems to be so obvious.
Yeah. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think a lot of that has to do with blood type. I believe the 4 different blood types respond and live in this world in a very different way. I think that O's are different than A's, A's are different than B's are different than AB's, AB's are different than O's. So B's, from my over 30 years experience, respond very much to their emotions first. Their emotions, art, music, different stimuli around them. I think O's like to do what they need to do and get over it and don't dramatize anything. Let's just do it. I think A's are anal retentive and very, very nervous. So everything is is analyzed in the way of how can I make this work and be organized. And ABs are a combination of drama and super intellect. So it's very confusing.
Well,
They're
no,
all very
not
different.
after. It's not confusing after I talk to you. That's brilliant breakdown. Here's 2 questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
So I must begin again by saying that I'm an Orthodox Jewish woman. So I was raised with knowing about the soul called the neshama my entire life.
Yeah.
So we discuss the neshama morning, noon, and night. All day long, we're talking about the soul. So the soul has a path. It has a what's the name? It has its own path, its own direction that it needs to go to in this planet. There are things it needs to experience and learn. Because I do believe in reincarnation. So there's something that my soul needs to learn at this time. And then collecting intellectual data is its own kind of pleasure. So the
Yeah.
soul has this path. And for me, the intellectual, the gathering of knowledge is really like better than eating ice cream and like better than, like going to the beach.
Oh, I love it. Second Turing question, can machines think?
Well, I'm a writer and I love Chat GPT. I write, I stick it in there, then I re-edit it again, then I stick it in there, and then I re-edit it again, and then I put it through Grammarly. So, at first I was very intimidated by it, and I wouldn't trust um, a computer to write an article, but I do like its edits, and sometimes it makes what I'm trying to say clearer. So I don't know if machines can think, but they certainly can um, make a organized pattern of my thoughts I'm trying to put forth.
Really good. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I'm probably the wrong person to speak to, so I'm 100% about meaning.
Well, Viktor Frankl's in Man's Search for Meaning says meaning tends to last and happiness doesn't necessarily last. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Detecting it.
Yes. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
We'd have to ask my son, who's a PhD physicist, applied mathematician, to answer that properly. I would probably say speed of light goes faster.
The poet Audre Lorde said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Yvonne Rainer, her associate, said, "You can if you expose the tool." What new tool do you suggest?
Wow. Say that one more time because my brain went off on a tangent. Say it, please, one
Yeah,
more.
that's good. It's basically, and I'm glad you're asking this. It's basically, what tool do you gravitate towards? You can add the word new if you want, and you can apply it to the cue quote. I start some of these questions with cue quotes. You don't have to apply the quote unless you want to. Audre Lorde said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tool." So you can put it in any context you want, whatever you feel best at.
Hmm. So I don't know that I have a direct answer to that. But when you say the word tool, like I have different tools for many things. I was a mom of 7 kids, so I had to acquire and use different tools to give birth to them, different tools to nurse them, different tools to raise them. Each one was an entity in and of itself and needed different conversation and different outlook. Then I became a lactation consultant, an herbalist, a book author, a homeopath. So my tools, I had to learn how to cook. I had to learn how to clean a house. So my tools, I just had to gather so many tools in so many different directions. So I would say that every endeavor that I take, it takes a new tool.
Yeah, that's good. So you're constantly, well, the next question is, what new toy do you suggest?
I mean, it's going to sound bizarre because I'm like an herbalist and a homeopath and peace loving. I give birth at home, but I think in this generation that everybody needs to learn how to use a pistol to protect themselves.
Okay, so
Heavy, heavy,
it is what
heavy.
yeah, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Ah, this week, getting kidnapped. That's terrifying to me right now. So that's in the forefront of my mind. Going to sleep, I get really worried about all the things I need to do the next day because
Yeah,
I always have 7,500 things to do with only, 20 hours to do it in. So those would be the two fears right now.
great. So McLuhan learned from a poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Hmm. So I think there's very few real artists in the world. I think there's a lot of fake artists.
Yeah,
There are a lot of people that, put on the glasses and put on the outfit and escape into being an artist because you don't have to accept as much responsibility as an artist. So I think there's so much fraud out there. It's terrible. I
yeah,
think the real artists are very revolutionary. They're the ones that created the internet, social media, how to use video cameras, how to edit them, besides the painting. So I think a real artist is someone that has an extremely high IQ and able to see the needs of people around them. Because even if we look back at people that started painting portraits, we didn't have cameras at the time.
yeah,
How would you remember an influential person in your life if you didn't have a visual? Because we see sadly that when someone passes away, like my mother just passed away about 2.5 months ago. So I try constantly to visualize her face, and it's hard and it fades. So I think that the person that created, really painting portraits was really a genius in making that available for people after people die. So I think the artist's mind is not as creative. I think it's actually very brilliant and mechanical.
it's really good. There's a big thing you touched on, like science and art. Do artists have moral obligation?
Um, Well, are we talking real artists? Oh, let me turn off my phone. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Whoa, 1 second. Sorry about that. Let me turn this off. Hold on. 1 second. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
So ask me that question again.
Yeah,
Oh,
when
do they have
you
moral obligations? Yes. So I, I see more and more the fake artists, the ones on Instagram that have an agenda, or the ones on Facebook that are selling products
yeah,
are 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 not real artists. So I think real artists have an obligation to help us function in the world that's ever changing.
yeah, that's good. And one artist said this, and I'm just curious your reaction. Art is making your problems other people's problems.
I hear you. I mean, if someone was molested as a child and wrote a book about it, it may be healing for that person, but it may also help 100,000 other people that don't
Yeah.
have the ability to articulate it. So I think there are artists that just do it for themselves. And I think that by default, if they're real and true, they'll end up touching the hearts of many, many people.
Really beautifully put. Thank you. So, are you more afraid of new ideas or old ideas?
Well, again, I have a book of laws that I live by. And in my culture, the old is more profound than the new. So we have to try to not be tripped up by new ideas, meaning there's the foundation of morality, ethics, caring for one another, kindness, business morals. And then the new inventions have to be careful that they don't get in the way of old wisdom.
Yeah. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Well, not the earliest, but my it's later. But my stepfather ran for political office, and it was there was no Facebook or internet at the time, and we drove around on a back of a truck handing out flyers and meeting people and shaking hands, and I just remember that was a blast. That was like a really fun memory of, he was on TV, and and he always wanted to have family members around him to, show how moral and ethical he was theoretically. So that was a really fun memory.
Very cool. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
I think it's very much a curse.
Wow. I love when someone says, 80 to 90%, 90% of people say blessing. So, what I love is the diversity of humans answering these questions. Thank you. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Well, my stepdad, for all his bad qualities, was a very good researcher and really taught me how to research and get connections. And so that was a really good tool. Like, I was never intimidated to make a cold call. I was never intimidated to meet anybody. I was never intimidated to say I didn't know things. So I think that was a very big influence in my life.
Same question outside your immediate family.
Well, I was an international competitive gymnast, and I was AAU junior Olympic champion, and my coach was very physically abusive. He slapped us, he pushed us, he hurt us. So it was really bad if I was living in 2024. But at the time, it taught me to be disciplined, to be punctual, to follow through. I actually competed with a broken foot. He taught me how to, if you crash on your head and feel dizzy, to get up and do it again. So even though he was abusive, wouldn't be allowed in 2024, I became a very, very disciplined person. And there's like not much I can't accomplish if I put my mind to it.
Wow. If God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I'm sorry.
Wow. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Evil exists.
The real hidden question here, Sara, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up with a few thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I don't think that's true at all. I think they have their own energy, and I don't think your thoughts will influence their power in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I don't
So,
believe that.
so what do you say? One of your children come home and they're being bullied. What do you say? How do you advise them to deal with it?
To let me, their mother, go in and talk to the teachers and the principal and call the mother and stand outside the school. I'm
Yeah.
a huge advocate for my kids, and I'm very against bullying.
Yeah. Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. Villains don't think they're bad, they want control. Heroes want freedom. In fact, Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, said if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong? So the basic question is a lot of prompts. Does punishment work?
I don't think criminals think they ever do anything wrong. I think they justify their behavior 100%.
Yeah.
Um, I think if a person was a criminal because they were influenced by people around them and had a weak constitution, I think that punishment and reform can help. But when it's really an evil person, I do not believe on any level that punishment or getting, retribution will ever make a difference.
Yeah. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Because I think that we're very blinded by the internal monologue that happens all the time. And like when I go out on a walk, I have to work very, 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 very hard to shut down my brain and look at a tree or look at a plant or look at the sky. And I think that when you see it in a film or you see it in a photograph, it makes you stop and look. And I think that's really important. I think it's really, really hard. Even when I'm with my grandkids, I will literally say, oh my gosh, let's all look at the clouds today. Or I'll be like, wow, let's see how many birds we can see. And even their little brains are so caught up when I pick them up from school. So I think it's really important to not only stop in nature to see what's around you, but also I buy them books all the time about cloud formations, about where does rain come from. This is an example. And I think they need to see it because I think their brains also tend to get into who was mean to me, who was nice to me, who had more candy than me. I think they also get lost.
Brilliant. My mom and dad taught me that looking at the clouds is like an art museum. It's a real good way to become conscious of life and breathing and being present. So thank you for that. So walk us through you have many, many callings, but let's tell me the tipping point. Like, was it you first like what did you study in college and in high school and college, and where was your tipping point? I'm going to be an herbalist. I'm going to be an author, you know. For your main callings in life, where were the tipping points?
So I was a childhood actress and I did a lot of movies and television. And I was a gymnast at the same time. So as a girl, I was confused between was I going to become a professional athlete or an actress. So that was kind of superimposed on me. What I really liked was medicine and wanted to go to medical school. And that was kind of really dissuaded because I was so successful in the world of acting as a child. So it wasn't really my choice. I actually was invited through Yale University to go to Oxford University and study Shakespeare and Chekhov.
Yeah.
And that's when I really fell in love with botanical herbal medicine. I always had seasonal allergies as a child, and were very, very much in my way, sneezing, itchy eyes. And when I got to England, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't bring any allergy medicine. I hadn't expected it to be so full of pollen when I got there. And my eyes were itchy and my throat was itchy. And, there wasn't anywhere in that day and age to go into an acute care. So I walked into the health food store and I said, I mean, my eyes are itchy. I'm sneezing, the back of my throat. And they gave me some herbs. And within an hour, I felt better. And I was like, what? What? I was shocked, and I didn't have the side effect of it wearing off. I mean, it did wear off. I had to repeat it, but I didn't have any side effects from it. And I just said, oh my gosh, there's something I'm missing. So instead of reading Shakespeare and Chekhov in the Oxford Library, I started reading about botanical medicine. And that
Oh,
was my shift. And I realized that plant based medicine is here to cure us.
yeah.
And I want to say that as a master herbalist, a trained herbalist, it doesn't mean we don't like MRIs and CAT scans and blood tests. We
Yeah.
do. And it doesn't mean you don't need an antibiotic sometimes, or you need a root canal, or you need heart surgery. That's
Yeah.
not real herbalist view at all. We
Yeah.
know that everything is put in the world for a reason. So preventatively, plant medicine is going to work 100% better than pharmaceuticals. In acute conditions, stroke, heart attack, gunshot wound, knife wound, God forbid, you absolutely need Western medicine. So I
Yeah.
really think it's important to combine both.
You are brilliant, man. When I heard you on the radio, I said, this woman is articulate. She's my hero. And I want to talk to you about a word I'm serious. It's beautiful what you just said, because, we have to see you're a comprehensivist. We got to understand what science has studied and learned and what the herbs and plants on the earth can do for us. But I learned this one wording, and it's all about wording, is that Eastern philosophy, which is more herbalist uh, oriented, would say, here's an effective remedy. In the West, we go to our doctor and say, give me a cure.
Yeah.
So the difference between remedy and cure, effective remedy and cure, because can you really cure anything?
So I listened to this one brilliant herbalist who is also an MD, and she was teaching that we need to know if we can cure, palliate, or prevent the disease from getting worse. And she said that if you don't understand the condition well enough and you don't understand herbal medicine enough, you're going to fail because you cannot tell someone you can have a cure. So if you can't, so if I have a kid that has chronic ear infections, we can cure it. We can cure that. That's
Yeah.
curable. A kid that has chronic strep throat, totally curable. Someone that has Crohn's, I don't want to just palliate it. I want to maintain the damage that has already been done and prevent future damage. So I'm
Yeah.
going to be giving a maintenance protocol.
Yeah.
And palliate is sometimes palliate, you can palliate someone that went through a crisis, and I can give them either a psychotropic drug or an herb that's calming and soothing that can palliate in the moment while they're trying to figure out what they're going to do after this crisis.
Yeah. So a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. You are an artist as a herbalist. That is your art form, let's say. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Well, the biggest thing with my practice is the compliance of the person on the other end. So I can come up with a phenomenal idea, phenomenal protocol that I know will really help this person. But if they're not going to be compliant, nothing's going to work. So, really, when it comes to, and I'm not a healer, I'm a facilitator. I'm not a healer. A healer is someone that can put their hands on you and give you a neck massage. A healer is someone that can put their hands on you and give you a cranial sacral adjustment. I'm an herbalist and a homeopath. I
Yeah.
simply use my intellect and I try to make a relationship between a person and a plant, between a person and a homeopathic remedy. So it's really hard for me to answer that question because a person can say, oh my gosh, Sara, that's the best plan in the world. They can do it for 48 hours. They know it's going to work and they just choose not to.
Yeah.
So it's hard to answer that because it depends on how hard the other person's willing to work.
You really anticipated the next question, and you have ESP because it is exactly that. Marcel Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your, do you call them clients or patients, or
Clients.
how much are you thinking of your client when you're in, let's say, discussion with them about their problem?
They get 1.5 hours with me. And I do get distracted here and there, like the phone just rang. I didn't turn it off. Sorry. But I try to give 90% of the time complete focus in on that patient to the best of my ability. Complete.
Yeah.
Because you find that a lot of the healing is just for someone to tell their story and you listen. That's already
Yeah.
part of the healing. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, MDs and osteopathic physicians and nurse practitioners get about 6 to 7 minutes with a patient if they're lucky. That is really their time frame. Whereas an herbalist, like I never feel like an hour and a half is enough time. I never. So they say that when we're working with a person, the first session is to hear the facts. Hi, I have a little eczema behind my left ear. I get a sinus infection. I always feel it in my left side. I have a little arthritis in my right knee. I'm getting facts. The second visit is really more the emotional component of those physical challenges that they have. And the third visit is when we can really take action. Now, in America, people aren't used to that kind of care. So it's a little hard. So I have to try the first 20 minutes to get the facts, just the facts. Then the next 20 minutes, I try very hard to get how it affects them emotionally. And then the last 20 minutes, I'm really trying to figure out their compliance,
Yeah.
what I can give them, what they can afford, and whether I feel less is more with this person. So
Yeah.
that's takes a lot of brain power for that hour and a half, a lot of brain power.
Amazing. Because, I saw a Western doctor maybe a half a year ago, and she just seemed to want kind of to listen, but I felt so distant. Whereas the two doctors I had before that, I would go in there and talk about my aunts and my mother being a nurse and this or that, and they would really give me closer to your 20 to 40 minutes, not 60 minutes, but they would give me about 30 minutes of like, this is sort of like just a listening dialogue session, and I'm going to tell you what's my body's wrong. And then you're saying most MDs are like 6 to 7 minutes they're going to give you. Is that what you were saying earlier? Like they
Yeah, so I do have some people that come in and shadow me that are in the straight allopathic medical field. And I had a woman spend a day with me, and she was an MD, fresh out of medical school, and she started like crying at the end of my working with me. I said, "What's going on?" She said she works for an acute care.
yeah.
She's getting doctor pay because she gets 7 minutes per patient. She was
Wow.
taking 10. She said she has to take their history, she has to come up with a plan, she has to do a physical assessment and write her notes within 7 to 10 minutes, and she was sobbing because she can't do
Yeah,
it. And
right.
my son is currently in medical school, and he gets a half an hour right now when he's trying to take a case. And he said well, I shouldn't quote him, but it's going to be very challenging for him to come up with such a short amount of time to come up with the healing that that person needs.
Wow, because he knows what you've said. So there's a couple
Absolutely.
there's a couple things there. Another one, a doctor, someone told me her dad was a doctor and he would hold the patient's hand when he was talking. And I was so touched by that because, nowadays it's like, what do you do? But it's like, what an amazing thing. How did you develop this skill to listen? Through being an herbalist, or that came before you? Did it come in your acting and athlete? What was it? What informed your listening?
So I first did a 5-year program in classical homeopathy. And I do want to say to any of your listeners, please only go to practitioners that are in school for a long time, because my first 5 years was case taking. So, as a classical homeopath, we do the anatomy and physiology, we do disease process, we learn about pharmaceuticals way before we get into learning homeopathic remedies. So, when I was first learning, if I came up with the wrong remedy, my teacher would say, "You didn't listen to the patient. Go back, listen again." Because it's not necessarily even the words the person uses, it's the way they articulate the problem, the choice of the words. We had to study body language. I did some courses on micro movements. The eyes go to the right, the eyes go to the left. What they do with their fingers, what would they do with their hands? Maybe I'm a little OCD and learn too much, but I really, I try to really like assess. It's so funny because I had a man recently, and I'm asking all these questions. He was there with his second wife, and I was asking about his first wife and his kids, and he's like, "This has got to stop. Like, are you just a gossip queen? Like, stop." And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no." I said, "I won't even remember the story. I'm looking at how you're reacting to my questions. What happens to your body while you're talking to me? The words you choose." And he was really upset at first, and he wanted to stop working with me. And then I gave him a protocol. And then he sent a message the next day. He goes, "I was an idiot." He said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so glad you asked me those questions. It sounds like the protocol is something I can do." So, people aren't really used to people asking questions and, like you said, listening. So they get a lot of time very defensive, like, "Why do you want to know that?" And it's not gossipy. It's just I have to hear where they're living in this universe, in their space. Like, how's it working for them?
Boy, you touch on a lot. Now, you said we got to be 60 minutes. So you got another 20 minutes. Is that right?
I have a little more time. I actually canceled my next client because it was just too
Okay.
much of a rush. I was just like, I
Okay.
called her and I said, "You're not going to get me 100%." She goes, "I want you 100% or I don't want
Okay.
you." So we have
So
a little more
we
freedom. Yeah.
so we could do the full 90, or what do you want to do?
Um, we can go. Yeah, I think we can do the 90.
Okay,
Sure.
let's go for that. That helps
Sure.
me
Good.
figure this out. That really I appreciate this
Good.
because
Yeah.
you've said the word truth a couple times, or seeking the truth. So I'm just going to give you a couple quotes by various people that include the word truth and just your intuitive reaction to them. What do you think? This is
Good.
Louis Buñuel. I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it.
You want me to comment?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of really profound truths in the world. Honor your mother and father. Don't kill. Don't steal. Say please and thank you. Say excuse me. So I think there's a lot of truths in the world. And I think that the problem with our generation, if I may comment, is that they're trying to dispel truth. And then people get very confused, very confused. And I'm going to jump to something that you may decide to edit out, and you can. When a person can choose their gender, you're already breaking down society. You can be born a man and feel more feminine. I don't care. You can be born a woman and feel more masculine. I don't care. But if I take the blood of any human, I can tell whether it's a man or a female. That's it. I can tell. We don't know alien blood yet. We have to listen more to Coast to Coast. But for right now, there's men and women.
Yeah.
And in so many languages in the world, there's the masculine and feminine while communicating. So I think when we break down that truth, we're going to have violence, confusion, stealing. So I do believe that, and again, anybody can feel whatever they want. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it was so funny because one of my children had an accident. We had to go to therapy a lot, and we're in New York City. So all of a sudden, the traffic was so bad, so bad. So I pull into the left lane only for buses. And my daughter was like, Ma, what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, feel like a bus. She's like, you got to get out of this lane. I said, if anybody stops me, I'm going to say, I'm a bus. You think I look like I'm a minivan, but I'm a bus. So, so we could definitely use our feelings wherever we want.
Yeah.
But there's certain truths. There's certain truths. If someone's born
Yeah.
right-handed, we can teach them to use their left hand. But when they become an athlete, they're going to be stronger in their left. So I'm an example. I must have been lefty as a girl, must have been, and it was not hip or appropriate or funky to be a lefty. And my mom always put my pen in my right hand. So now I write with my right hand, but I do all my sports on the left side. I'm a
Yeah.
lefty.
Yeah.
So you see, so that's a truism. That's just, so go back to your question. I believe that there are some very profound truths in the world. I
Yeah.
do.
It's very, very good how you interpret it, because most most people, I say, Louis Buñuel says, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it, which is in sort of implying this: the truth is always in flux, how we define exactly what is true. Excuse me, but you've really articulated some that I totally agree with. Honor your mom and dad, don't kill, don't steal. And 90% of people, when I say the Buñuel quote, they go, oh yeah, that's great. And one person said, no, that's not right, because if I want to seek something, if it's because I want to find it. So if I'm seeking the truth, it's because I want to find it. So I morphed that question into, the cliche goes, the journey is more important than the destination. Why do we have to name or seek a destination if the journey is more important?
So because I work with a lot of teenagers and a lot of kids as a homeopath and herbalist, I feel that if they don't know what they want their destination to be, it's very easy to be lazy, passive, and become overwhelmed. So for me, and maybe because I was a gymnast, my upbringing, I think it's very important to have a destination. Should you be flexible if it doesn't work out? Yeah, sure. Of course. You need to be flexible if it doesn't work out. But the old saying is if you're, going down the highway and you don't know what exit, should I get off here? No, I'm going to be on the highway. Maybe I'll get off here. Oh no, I don't know. But if you're going 5 more exits and then getting off, there's a calm, there's a soothing in the body. There's a strength. And I want that strength for people. So if they know they want to, become I don't know, a banker. That's their whole goal, is to become a banker. They may in the end 3/4 of the way say, you know what, I don't want to be a banker, but I'm going to go into another aspect of finance. But I feel everybody should have a goal of a destination.
Yeah. And it's interesting because people who changed the world forever, they were called flaneurs. They're in Paris in the 20s. And they sort of just, sat around at coffee houses and drank coffee. And then they would have an epiphany, as James Joyce said, an epiphany in everydayness. So there is this kind of the wandering, the free spontaneity that can lead to a truth also. So I'm curious on, yeah, go ahead if you want to
I'm
comment
going
on
to say, like, that's what everyone that's doing ayahuasca wants. And I think that ayahuasca, in my opinion, is the downfall of American culture.
that. Yeah.
Just like magical mushrooms. I think it's the downfall, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because the epiphanies that people are having with ashwagandha, with ayahuasca, I don't know that anyone's taking clear action after they have that epiphany. I would love to see studies on that.
Yeah.
I have people that are, and people that come to me as an herbalist and want to talk about microdosing the magical mushrooms. Those are always the people that never get things done. They're the husbands that forget to pick up the kids on time, go through jobs. They kind of float through life. And unfortunately, my experience is you have to pay rent or buy a house. You have to pay for electricity. You have to pay for car insurance. I see you're from Venice, California. You can't really get around so well in LA without a car. And these things mean that you have to show up and do your work. So I think just sitting around in a coffee shop, if you're a multimillionaire and you have tons of money invested, then I think it's great to sit around and have epiphanies. I just don't think that the average person or 90% of the world can do that.
Yeah. And Shelby Foote said, a fact is not a truth until you love it. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I don't always love honoring your parents, and I don't always love not stealing. I mean, look at that cute purse in the window. Like, it would look great with my hair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think you have to like truths at all. So I will very vehemently disagree with that. I don't think you have to like truths. There
Yeah.
are truths,
Yeah.
If I see an older woman crossing the street carrying a heavy bag, I may have a little bit of a pain in my arm, but I'm going to offer to help her, because the truth is that I'm still healthier than her at this point, you know? So
Did you? That was beautiful. Sara, did you learn that to help other people from the way your parents raised you or on your own? More so. I mean,
I
is
mean,
it?
it's part of the culture that I live. It's
Yeah.
it's just you just have to do that.
Yeah.
Just in order for a community to work, you have to do that. Like it's not even a question. You don't have to like it. You don't have to feel like you're in the mood. One of my mentors always said, like, if there's a hungry person that comes to your house, certainly now it's a little different with the homeless that, need medication and have mental illness, sadly, but people used to, through Eastern Europe, travel from city to city, and they would show up in a city hungry and tired. And he always said that, like, if that person knocks on your door and needs a meal, they don't care if you're fighting with your husband, getting along with your husband, in an emotional good state, in a good mood, in a bad mood, on your cycle. What that person needs in that moment is just a bowl of soup and a little bit of brown bread. So
Yeah.
you do it. It doesn't matter where your emotional state is at.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. Help others. And so this is Eartha Kitt. Truth is a theory that is constantly being disproved. Only lies, it seems, go on forever.
I mean, we're back to that truth. I believe there's truth. So I don't know if that quote applies to me per se. And I believe that lies always prove themselves to be lies.
Yes.
I feel they always do.
And then Marcel Proust's question is, on what occasion do you lie?
My weight, I would totally lie about my weight. I'm going to begin lying about my age soon. I do exaggerate for drama if I'm trying to, cut tuition at a kid's school. So that's where I would say little white lies or exaggerate.
Yeah.
A policeman that pulls me over for speeding, I would explain desperately how I'm on the way to deliver a baby. And now you're delaying this baby being born. And, I mean, I would definitely, make up a little bit of a story to not get a speeding ticket in LA.
Here's Leonard Cohen. The only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk taking play in your creative process?
Oh, for sure. You have to take risks all the time. I'm on this podcast right now. I didn't know that much about you. I usually do a lot of research. It was a risk. It's so funny because you're fabulous, by the way. I'm so glad to be here. I did a podcast with a woman once, and I really like to send over talking points. Not that we have to discuss that, but like, so there's no lulls in the moment, and they understand, where I am an expert and where I'm not. And she goes, "Oh no," she goes, "Oh no, I don't need talking points." She goes, my interviews are so great. And I have to tell you, I mean, there was dead space from the second she introduced me. I mean, thank God I'm like obnoxious loud and have a lot to say, because there was more dead air there than I've ever been in my life. So I think that I take risks all the time. Every time I have a client in the office and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I can help you with that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, can I help with that disease? Can I really help with that challenge that they're having? And I hope the answer is yes. But oh my God, I think getting out of bed in the morning for me is a risk for sure.
You are an inspiration. I appreciate this. So, Sara, what does courage mean to you now?
I mean, you know, y- y- I'm not really fearful of going anywhere or doing anything. I was a childhood actress. I just told the story the other day. And I was up for a movie way back when to play Barbara Streisand's daughter. I can't even remember what film it was. And I had a bunch of callbacks. And you had to know how to ride a horse, which I can ride. So on one of the last interviews, they said, "We know you can ride a horse, but can you jump a horse? We need you to jump a horse." And I was like, "Oh, sure." Like no problem. And I went out to my mom. I was maybe 10. I was like, "Ma, can I jump a horse?" She said, "We're taking lessons right now. Let's go." And that was kind of my upbringing. Do you know what I mean? Like, sure, yeah, did it yesterday, kind of. So I'm kind of not afraid of too much. That's
Beautiful.
kind of, that is a bit of my upbringing. Like, you can do it, you can figure it out.
Really good. The people who invented comedy improv, because this is it's almost like we're improvising here, but you have your stock lines and I have my script, but we're really veering off. And I feel that I'm learning a lot, and I appreciate this because Viola Spolin was a social worker in Chicago, and she did role playing exercises and basically invented comedy improv and spawned Second City, Saturday Night Live, all these, just Colbert and everybody. Viola was actually, they were blending, you probably know this guy, Martin Buber, thou and I. He's like
Yeah,
a Jewish mystic, right?
yeah.
Those two people are the ones who kind of are credited as the founders of comedy improv. But here's Viola's quote: "If the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it." So, what role does struggle play in your creative process?
Well, first, I want to say, and then we'll get to the struggle question, that my son is a stand up comedian in LA.
Yeah.
He's a regular at, oh my gosh, it's on Sunset, the Laugh Factory. He's Menachem Silverstein, and he's really great. He loves stand up. So there you go. A little plug for Menachem and the Laugh Factory Thursday nights.
Good.
So, what was the question again? I just
Well,
diverted because
what role does struggle play? Because I mean, I say what role does struggle play because in essence, the Barbara Streisand, 10-year-old thing was like you didn't struggle. You were like confident, but you knew that when you went to your mom and go, I know how to jump a horse, right? So I mean, there there's some struggle there, but what role in general does struggle play? Even in being an herbalist and being
Yeah.
the person you are.
I mean, it's always a struggle with clients because sometimes they tell me half truths. Like you asked the question before about half truths. So they don't always tell me everything. They may not trust me. They may not trust people around them to say their truths. So that's always going to be a struggle. I struggle to stop doing too much because I like to do 50 million things a day rather than just, five. That's so we have people that are a little lazy and that's their struggle. And then we have I want to say overachievers, but maybe over learners, and that's a struggle.
Yeah.
Um, I have 7 kids, thank God, and I feel all their pain and all their struggle, even if they're in another state, and that's a problem because their cells are still in my brain. So when they're sad, I feel it, even though they don't want me to still feel it. I do. So there's a lot of struggle, a lot of
Yeah.
struggle.
What was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch or your guess?
Say it again.
What was the motive of the cave artist?
You mean when people lived in cave like cavemen?
When people lived in caves, why did they draw things on the wall? I mean, we know there was cave dance and cave music, but we don't have documents of it. Cave art, we have, these drawings of animals and whatnot. What do you think their motive was?
Well, when I was younger, I used to, before we had phones, I would like write on my arm notes of things to do. And it was so funny because one of my kids was in the hospital once, and the doctor asked me a question, and I said, wait a minute. And I pulled up my sleeve, and she said, oh my gosh. And she pulled up her sleeve, and the two of us were laughing so hard because she had all these notes on her arms. So when I hear that, I'm like, it's just to remind them what they need to do.
Yeah. You'll love this. My favorite is
Buffalo.
my favorite is I make a list of everything I have to do for the day, and then if I lose the list, I have the day off. But the next day, I start a new list, and it says "Find old list" at the top of the list.
It's like the Nate the Great books. Are you familiar with them at all? The
Tell me a
children's
little.
books? Oh,
Yeah.
anyways, he's always looking for lost lists. That's great. Love that.
Oh, great. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
I mean, it's probably compromise. I would say, especially with what the world's going through right now. So it's probably compromise.
There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right. Thank you.
Yeah.
You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these 3 elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
I'd say ambition first, skill second. And I don't think I'm a lucky person. So I struggle with luck. And I have friends that have good luck.
I think you touched on this earlier. A poet says that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Well, it's in English. That's for
But I
sure.
mean, it's more so metaphorically. What form is your inner consciousness in?
List making, problem solving,
Yeah.
planning, analyzing.
Yeah. 2 of my film heroes, their mantra is ignore yourself. There's no self-expression. Jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self expression or more your vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
I do believe some people are vessels. I do believe that. I do believe that there were prophets. I do. I do believe that there are a lot of artists. My mother was a phenomenal songwriter, and she didn't work very hard at it. She would just get up and write a song. I have another sister who's also a songwriter, and she doesn't work hard at it. It just comes through her. I,
Yeah.
I'm one of the people that have to work really, really hard to attain anything. So that doesn't happen to me. But I do believe that there are a lot of people that function in the world like that. I'm not one of them, but I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a great line I love to repeat. The more you practice, the luckier you get.
Yeah, that's kind of always my life. I have
Yeah.
to work and work and work and work and work. It may appear to people out there, oh my gosh, she's got this big, huge practice and she's an herbalist. You know, um, and I teach at a lot of herbal schools. And I mean, I had to set up my practice and work hard at it and become proficient at it. And I had a lot of different mentors. Like I had one mentor for herbal medicine, one mentor for homeopathic, one mentor for lactation, one mentor when I was studying birth. You know what I'm saying? A marriage counselor, someone to help me when I raised my kids. So I believe that having a mentor or someone to go to is 911 with success. Like
Yeah.
I could not imagine ever being successful without having mentors to go to. I wouldn't know how to do it.
It's beautiful. Can art making be egoless?
Well, it's funny that you say that because my daughter is an artist. My daughter's a painter. One of my daughters. Remember, I have 7 children, and she really sits down and paints. And I don't believe there's an ego involved at all. As a matter of fact, when she's done with it, she's like, "Oh, it's terrible. I used the wrong colors. It doesn't even look like what I want it to look like, and it's spectacular." And I have to literally like hold her hands back from throwing it away. So I think she's a phenomenal artist without ego involved.
Yeah. Is perception reality?
I think we have a problem because the way we're raised, we're very tunnel vision. We're very tunnel vision. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to a Jewish thought, if you feel comfortable.
Please.
So, there's an obligation to learn every day, more so than for men than women. Not that women aren't intelligent, we supposedly have more intuitive perception, but you're supposed to have what is called a chavrusa. The word in Hebrew is chavrusa. And you're not really supposed to learn on your own. You're supposed to learn with a chavrusa, with someone else, because you have a text written by a third party. You have your perception of it from the way you were raised, your environment, the food you're eating. And then when you learn with another person coming from a different home, different food, maybe different city or state, then you can only begin to understand the writing.
Yeah. That's so
Profound.
wise.
Yeah.
So wise, so profound. I practice that daily.
Yeah.
Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Peace. I wake
Uh,
up every day hoping there's going to be peace. So that's kind of at this moment, an unbelievable thought. I do think about that all the time. How could we create peace? How we could make peace? How we could stop hurting and killing? That's a big one for me. I certainly can't problem solve on that one. Certainly can't.
but
Um,
we have to aspire. Like it's if you don't have dreams, your dreams can't come true.
right.
So tell me one major element of your just creativeness in all these pursuits that stayed the same and one major element that's changed in the years you've been doing this.
So I think hard work and having a mentor has stayed. Um, I think change has been letting go when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Letting go when my clients, remember, I'm a lactation consultant also. So I can see that this newborn can feed, and then the mother gives up and doesn't do the protocol.
Yeah.
And I know the baby can do it. Like if I could talk to the baby. So I have to let it go when people get what I consider good and profound advice and they don't take it. I have to just let it go.
Yeah. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Well, I'm a big fan of Feldenkrais, by the way. I think that he was a phenomenal guide to physical healing.
Yes.
I think I'm glad you brought that up. And then you asked me, what is my weakness? Is that what you asked?
What is a weakness that you've turned into a strength?
My reading, my dyslexia.
Yeah.
I've worked really hard at it over the years. There's not a day that I don't work on it. And it was very hard to overcome when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how intense it is. When I was in homeopathic school as an adult woman, we would read a homeopathic case in the morning, and the whole day we would discuss the case, the whole day. So as an adult woman, I had to go over to my teacher, already married with kids, and say, I'm a real slow reader, and it's going to take me double or triple the time to read the case and understand it. Could you give us the case and then give a coffee break immediately after, please? So that everyone can go take a break and I can continue to read it. Because if I don't understand the case, then I'm wasting my entire day. And he did. And even when I sat recently for my IBCLC exam to be re-licensed, now it's on computer and it's timed. And I had to appeal to the board. And then they wanted me to get reevaluated. And I said I was evaluated. I was like 5 years old. And it was like $2,500 to get reevaluated to prove that I have slow reading, dyslexia, eye tracking. And I was like, I can't believe this. And then I had to get a note from my doctor. I had to work so hard to get extended test taking time. And I did, and I passed my exam, but I would have never passed it if it was time, if I had to do it within that period of time.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when.
Can I tell you a story on that?
Hey.
So I talk about in my book, Moodtopia, a story of my mom. So I come from the Hollywood Hills. I come from Laurel Canyon and Mulholland, by the way. That's where I was raised. And as you know, there's twisty, twisty canyons there. And there was one corner, my mother used to drive me to school into the city. And there was one corner where every day there was almost a near accident. So my mother was frustrated and then got angrier and angrier because she felt it was really a danger. So she called the city and said, we need a stop sign here. This was way before Facebook or any kind of social media. So they said, if you get 1,000 signatures, we'll put up a stop sign. So my mother, with her anger, went door to door, got 1,000 signatures. And to this day, there's a stop sign on that corner. So that's the example that I give in my book, Moodtopia, and other places, that anger really stimulated her ability and strength to get that done. If she was passive, there wouldn't be a stop sign. She had to get to that point that it was so angry that she was willing to take action. So I do think that if you don't live in a constant state of anger, that anger can give you the impetus and the strength to create and make change that needs to be made.
Really beautiful story. Thanks for articulating it. And there's your book right there, Moodtopia. What a great title and a great cover. So it goes right along again, Sara. This is, you're anticipating these questions so well. This is, you create what you resist. I'm not saying you, but one creates what one resists. That's the basic thought I'd love you to comment on, but I'll set it up. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into "You are what you hate." And James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And back to Louis Buñuel said, thank God I'm an atheist. So just this thought, you create what you resist, or one creates what one resists. Any thought on that?
That's a hard one. One creates what one resists. I don't know. I kind of fight against that.
Yeah.
So I would say that I fight against that. I mean, if something's wrong with the school for my kids, I mean, I'm up there protesting and complaining. So I don't think it applies too much to me. It may to people in the world.
Yeah.
Like, if they had a father was an alcoholic and they didn't want to become that alcoholic and they kept losing jobs, they could turn towards that drink. So that one doesn't apply to me too much.
Yeah. Can you forget to die?
No, I'm getting older now and I think about it a lot more and I have to prepare for it and get ready for it.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. I think in your 20s and 30s and 40s, yeah. But when you get to a certain age, it's such a reality that I think most people begin to think about it.
How do you find peace of mind?
I don't.
Good laugh.
I struggle. No. Peace of mind. Oh, no. No, that's not my forte. I would never write a book that says how to find peace of mind. I struggle every day.
Well, let's go to laughter for a second because Gurdjieff said laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no. What, because you have a great laugh, what is the function of laughter?
Well, I wish I had the book. Hold on. Let's see if I have it right here. Oh my gosh. Hold on. Reading glasses. Here we go. Let's see if I can find this quote. Give me a second. Give me a second. Okay. And this was written in 1928 by an author, James Walsh, called Laughter and Health. And he writes, if I may read,
Please.
laughter, which is particular to man and is shared by none of the animals, is a process very difficult to understand from its mental aspect, for no one has ever been able to explain satisfactorily just why our diaphragms go into a series of convulsive movements whenever we hear or see anything funny. While laughter is a mystery from its mental aspect, it is easy to appreciating its far-reaching physical aspects. The diaphragm, the principal organ involved in it, is in intimate anatomical relations with all the organs in the body that carry on physical life. Whether there are convulsive movements in the diaphragm, they are sure to be affected as them. As laughter always makes us feel better for having indulged in it, it is evident that the effect of the movements of the diaphragm and the large organs in its neighborhood is beneficial.
Oh yeah. Beautiful.
Wow. Wow.
That's that's so beautiful. You just yanked that off your shelf and read that. I am so into that.
Yeah.
James James J. Walsh. So cool because it reminds me of what my mother taught me about crying. She says, "Hey, crying is emotional release, but it's also getting toxins out of your body through the tears."
Love it. Love
It's
it.
physically. But Steve Allen says behind every joke there's a grievance. What do you think of that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Of course. Of course. That's for sure. That's of course. Yeah. 100%.
Here's 5 quick Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head in just a couple words. 1, who started it all?
I mean, I'd have to say God, but that's so hard to understand. Next.
2, are we going to make it?
uh, yeah.
3, where do we put it?
I Where do we put it? I would say inside a happy home.
Beautiful. 4, who's cleaning it up?
Oh, people that are type A personality, OCD, overprotective people.
5, is it serious?
Yeah, I think this world is really serious. As I said, I do believe in reincarnation, and I believe that we're all here for a reason. We have our own destiny, our own karma, and there's something we all have to learn and or do.
Yeah. If you were walking down the street and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Under. I will in public bathrooms turn them under. I will do that. Paper towels and toilet paper have to come under. Public bathrooms, train stations, airports. I'm changing it. Yeah.
Beautiful. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
She worked really, really hard.
They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Um, maybe sandalwood.
Where'd you get your work ethic from?
I'd probably have to say the Torah.
Raw. Wow. Not your parents.
No.
Right. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Oh my gosh. I would want it to be in Israel. I'd probably want it marble. And I would want it to say she took one for the team.
There you go. Sorry, we got about 10 more minutes. This again been so delightful and I've learned a lot. This is a question concerning the word archive. And the basic 2 questions are, is archiving more innate or more invented? And do you have plans for your own archive? But let me set it up because the word came from 1400s to keep safe, free from harm. 200 years later, it was what we know as an archive, a record preserved as evidence. But if you study Eastern philosophy, it's live in the moment, be here now. Wyndham Lewis says artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. But the Egyptians would put stuff in their coffin with them, you know, when they died. And someone in asking this recently said, there's something I think in the Bible where they, or some ancient religion where people would bury their family under their home because it was almost like the archive would leak up into their living space.
Hmm.
So, you know, why do we want to save stuff? And I know I'm for studying history, and you're stressing you learning researching skills from your grandfather is important because I'm a researcher too. But isn't the point of life to live in the moment? So is this need or want to archive more innate or more invented?
I think it's probably very innate.
Yeah.
And I think that we want to pass on to our children and grandchildren the mistakes that we made so they don't have to relive them. That's what I would say. Not that they listen to me, but when you make a mistake, you want to tell someone, "Hey, I tried it this way, it didn't work. Find another way." So I,
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what I would think archiving the importance would be.
Yeah. In your own personal archives, you have stuff for preparing your books and all your research on being an herbalist. When you die, you just expect your kids to take care of it, or do you have a plan? Is it going to some place or an archive itself, or any plans for
I'm
your
work
own
I'm working on that right now. My mother just passed away, like I said. I don't know I don't remember what I said in the beginning of the show, maybe 45 days ago. So I see that that's very important to plan. So I'm thinking about it now. I don't have an answer.
Yeah,
Okay, pleasure.
yeah.
Shh.
No, that's you know what, Joan Baez. They went to make the documentary about her, and you have any archives? She goes, yeah, my mother saved everything in a storage space for 50 years. I've never opened it. So they hit the holy grail, and they went through the archives and got all this stuff. And then she's sitting there being interviewed about the movie and says, so what are you going to do with your archives? She goes, I don't care, just throw it off the side of a mountain. And her assistant said, oh no, we're dealing with the Smithsonian right now to preserve.
Right, right.
So another A word, anarchy. Utah Phillips says anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
I mean, again, it's so funny because I'm not such a religious person, but I am an Orthodox Jewish woman, but I am hip and funky and listen to music and go dancing and hiking. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm certainly not conservative and boring. But I would say that the Ten Commandments are really important. And I
Yeah,
think they're not to be broken. And I think they're for everybody. And I think that I think it's really hard to live with other people in a home, in a community, in a city, in a state. And I feel there has to be basic rules or we get anarchy.
yeah. Because it's funny, the word freedom etymologically means the same thing as anarchy, giving, or what Utah Phillips defines anarchy as giving oneself one's own rules. So that morphed into McLuhan saying, how are you to argue with people who insist on sticking their heads into the invisible teeth of technology, calling the whole thing freedom? What does freedom mean to you now?
So I'm so glad that you said that. So I was a classical ballerina. And, there's first position, second position, third position, fourth position, fifth position. There's exact arm positions that your arms need to go to. And I always felt that the best dancers were the ones that learned classical ballet and learned the rules. And that was their foundation. They learned how to warm up, they learned how to stretch, they learned how to prevent injuries. And then after they had that foundation, they could then be creative and do modern, they could do hip hop, they could do any kind of dancing. I saw throughout my life that the people that didn't have the foundation of how the body works through the air and with their muscles would break an ankle, pull a muscle, injure themselves. So I was very much and I'm still of the belief that when you have those rules and that foundation, the concrete under the structure, you can build a house to look like anything. You can
Yeah,
build your life to look like anything. But if you don't have that concrete as an athlete, as a businessman, including morals and ethics, then everything can crumble just way too quickly. And we see a lot of very wealthy people that become broke very quickly. We see a lot of stars that, really become famous and then they crumble. And
yeah,
I think if you look at the ones, I mean, there's always going to be some criminals that succeed. We spoke about evil earlier, but I think the ones that really maintain their wealth and maintain their reputations are ones that do have a moral and ethic.
yeah. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I thought you were going to say that was negative. So that was a
Well,
shock.
guess what? Guess what? This is funny you said that because a lot of people, not a lot, but let's say 50-50, they go, well, I don't see any that inspires me. I see cultural shifts that don't inspire me. So, I mean, you could take it either way, but it is more so. Tell me one that is inspiring to you.
Well, it's funny. I wrote an article for the Huffington Post years ago, when everyone was freaking out about Facebook, even before Instagram.
Yeah.
And I said that what was really fun for me was as my kids were growing up, I would see these posts that they would post on morality and ethics or post about art they liked, excuse me, or what they were doing. And I felt like social media really gave me a glimpse into my children's lives that I
Yeah.
may ordinarily miss. And I wrote the article in this was really at the beginning, encouraging parents to be really happy about it.
Yeah.
And I really was surprised, to see all the good my kids were doing and posting on social media. So social media can be horrible and bullying and detrimental and negative. There's no question about that. But I really feel it's really a great glimpse into certain aspects of my kids that I wouldn't ordinarily see.
Yeah. It's like McLuhan says an amazing thing. Everything we invent has services and disservices. And understanding is not having a point of view. If you look at the big picture comprehensively, how it's shaping our behavior, then we can learn how to cope with what we don't like about it. But, you know, when you're with one or more people, if you don't say, I love or hate this, you're going to get a bigger picture. And so tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Tell me something good I never had and never wanted.
Yes.
I'm confused. What does that mean? Tell you something good that I never had and never wanted?
Yeah.
I mean, until my mother, I never had a death of a loved one.
But that's not good. Death of a loved one is not good.
Oh, something good I never had and never wanted?
Yeah, it's good. There's a big irony in it. It's like a koan that it's good. You never had it, but you never want it.
I would say multiple properties
Yeah.
because that would be really scary for me if someone didn't have money or lost their job and they still had to pay me rent.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know how to I wouldn't be able to ask them for money, and then I wouldn't know how I would cover the bills.
Okay.
So that was always very scary for me. Like,
Good.
and I also, like, never had a big corporation for that same reason, because if someone had to, like, miss because their kid was sick, like,
Yeah.
I would say take a week off, not a day, and then I
Yeah.
would wanna pay them, and how would I cover it? So I guess that would be the answer to that.
Tell me a question that remains unresolved for you.
Why bad things happen to good people. There
Yeah.
you go. That's
Yeah.
it.
How has being an herbalist shaped your behavior?
I feel there's almost always a solution. I know that it says, um, that our creator put the refuah, the healing in the world before people and plants and trees. If we believe in the days of creation, were created before man. And so I always feel that, like, you and I discussed earlier about a cure, but I do believe that plants have an intelligence that we don't understand. And I never understand, like, if someone has a sinus infection and I give them an herb called yerba santa, how does the herb know to go up to the sinuses and clear the mucus? If I have a child with fluid in their ears, how in the world does the herb eyebright, when they ingest it, know to go and clear up the fluid in the ear? It like baffles my mind. You know what I mean? It baffles my mind.
Yeah.
So there's such an intelligence in these plants that we have not even begun to understand. And so it's changed my view in of life,
Yeah.
that these are our allies and that they're here to help heal us. Like, we know if people don't eat salads, they're going to be constipated. I mean, let's be simple. You
Yeah.
don't eat enough vegetables, you're not stooling. That's painful. So it's like amazing that you can eat romaine lettuce or iceberg lettuce and it can, help. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing with other plants, whether it's, ringing in the ears, tinnitus, or it's a pneumonia, or whether it's, indigestion or joint pain. There are plants that if you ingest regularly, they will maybe not cure, we discussed that, but it will definitely help alleviate the challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I had what my heroes, both James Joyce and Frank Zappa, had duodenal ulcer. And then they found that thing. Oh, well, ulcers aren't caused by worry. They're caused by something, scientific. We can
Yeah,
prove this. And so I went to the health food store and I says, hey, what can I do about this? And he says, juice cabbage. And everybody goes, oh, that sounds horrible. I basically have juiced cabbage along with carrots and greens for 20 years and been way more healthy, never had a cold, and it's really kind of cured my stomach problem, which most people take omeprazole or
yeah,
and it's like, hey, it worked, and it's just a plant that grows. So
yeah. They are kind of very miraculous, and even after working as a herbalist for over 30 years, I still don't even understand how they work. I understand
yeah,
their action, but
yeah,
I can't explain, nor can really anybody, how it does that action.
yeah.
No clue.
Yeah, and then you bite into a blueberry or a strawberry, and it tastes so good. As my wife and I say, taste but orgasm, but it's also doing something good for you to live longer and healthier. Okay, two more and we're out of here. What a pleasure and joy. Thank you so much. This is Thornton Wilder, 1928. Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Trying to help create a better life for people that come to me,
Yeah.
to give them the tidbits of wisdom that I've worked really hard to get, that they may be too lazy or unable to research on their own.
Yeah. What gives you the most optimism?
Mm. Such a hard one right now where the world is at. What gives me the most optimism? I mean, I do not own a dog right now because I'm in a small apartment in Brooklyn. Um, but when I'm around dogs and I see their joy at seeing a human being, I see their ability to cuddle up and their protection, it makes me feel there has to be more good in the world that I'm not seeing at this moment.
Yeah. It's beautiful because, Sara, the first question was, what's the best thing for a human being? Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. The last question, what gives you the most optimism, is what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people.
Mm.
So, sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it was you. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thank you, Jerry with a G. I was gonna sing that song. It's Jerry with a G, not Jerry with a J. Very cute. Yeah, absolutely. No, this was great.
Well,
And
I do
I
have
hope
a
you
bonus. I do have one bonus question. Being raised in Laurel Canyon, I'm curious. Frank Zappa lived it right there on Woodrow Wilson. So did Sam Fuller, and so did John Cassavetes. You ever encounter any of those guys in your?
absolutely. My mother taught Moon Zappa. So Frank Zappa was around all the time talking to my mom. Absolutely.
And your mom taught Moon what?
She was a school teacher. She substitute taught at a school in the area, and then they had her on for a permanent teacher when the other teacher didn't make it, so Moon was her student.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you come into Venice, and we'll hang out on the boardwalk and talk some more in person. Thank you so much, Sara.
This was a great interview, very unexpected, very different than my typical podcast where I'm just teaching the action of plants and how people can integrate it in their lives. So this was really thought provoking and really fun. It was great. I like to think deeply, and your questions were very profound, very deep, and made my brain really kind of, pulsate and have all of this vibrational energy as I was trying to really take the questions very seriously. So thank you. That was
Thank
very
you.
pleasurable.
Thank
All the
you. It
best.
was It really you enlighten me a lot. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Be well, and all the best to your listeners.
Thank you so much.